Now the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity.
And welcome, everyone, to a special edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. It is the fourth installment of our six-part series, the end-of-the-year awards on the Three Martini Lunch. Today we're looking at best idea politically, worst idea, and boldest tactic. And Jim, let's start with best idea. And I kind of alluded to this a little bit in one of my Thanksgiving commentaries on the podcast. And that is in the wake of the grisly Kermit Gosnell trial. And thankfully he was convicted of murdering those babies that he snuffed out after they were born alive after botched abortion attempts. We have many different states around the country now that have adopted 20-week bans, essentially, on abortion. That is pretty much the minimum standard by which most medical experts believe that babies can feel pain. That's kind of the latest point where they believe it's definite that the babies feel pain. And now a bunch of different states have essentially made it very, very difficult to terminate pregnancies after that point. That is a great win for the pro-life community, and hopefully it will stand up in court. We're going to find out pretty soon, I think, on the Texas law whether or not these will be allowed to stand. But good news for the pro-life community and good news for the unborn.
That is a very good choice there, Greg. I'm going to go with one that's a little more recent, and it's not a huge idea. I think it represents a kind of significant small step, and that was in the most recent budget deal passed by the House and Senate. It includes a tiny, tiny step towards entitlement reform by having federal employees contribute a bit more towards their pensions. Now, if you're a federal worker, you have a very generous retirement program compared to most folks in private industry. But beginning in January, they'll start to contribute 4.4% of their pay. Almost 1% people were thrown into the pension fund. Now it goes up to 4%, and now, of course, 3% for those who were hired in 2013. So basically, the new hires will be the folks who will be paying the most. Those who've been here a long time are going to get kind of the easiest deal. But having federal workers contribute to these giant unfunded pension liabilities is a step in the right direction. It is a small step, but I just point out that, with Harry Reid controlling the Senate and Obama in the White House, anything we get in the area of entitlement reform is going to be very small. So that's my tiny salute to Paul Ryan's negotiating tactics and maybe the one good thing that came out of the most recent budget deal.
On to the worst idea, and I had a tough time choosing between two here, especially. There were a lot of bad ideas that came out. In
Bumper crop. This is the 1983 NFL draft of bad ideas. We've got our Elways, our Marinos, our Jim Kellys, our Darryl Greens. I mean, there's just one terrific Hall of Fame caliber bad idea after another this year.
Yes, exactly. And ironically, neither of them have to do with Obamacare, though I'm sure I could have dredged up plenty from there. With a respectful hat tip to the horrible idea of signing a nuclear deal with the Iranians, I'm going to go with the Republican Party embracing amnesty as part of immigration reform. When Mitt Romney lost, the RNC launched this whole where did we go wrong study, and the only policy they specifically recommended was comprehensive immigration reform. Then we got this gobbledygook mess in the Senate bill, which for some reason Marco Rubio went along with. I think he regrets that now. John McCain, of course, you expect. The Lindsey Graham, that sort. But Jeff Flake, a lot of disappointment there. And even though it hasn't become law yet because of conservatives in the House of Representatives, it still seems like John Boehner wants to ram this through. For some reason, Paul Ryan is a champion of this on the same level as Luis Gutierrez. And it looks like Bob Goodlatte in the Judiciary Committee is pushing a lot of what the Senate tried to do, only in a piece-by-piece format. The Republicans, if this passes, are going to be in for a very rude awakening because we already know that it's unlikely that the border provisions will be enforced. McCain doesn't want to do that, and we know that Obama only enforces what he wants to enforce in the law. I think they're going to be shocked at the ballot box that, hey, Hispanics don't just care about this one issue. They're not going to get the electoral windfall that they were expecting from this. So the smart play here is to not go along that same line, but for some reason they seem to want to.
Those are some really great selections there, Greg. I very easily could have gone with that one. Very easily could have gone with one related to Obamacare, could go with the government shutdown, not working the way the Republicans wanted to. One I thought for a really long time I was going to go with was the Syrian Red Line, clearly ending in a humiliating defeat for American interests, in which we are now basically pulling for Assad, even though he used chemical weapons against his own people and is suffering no real serious consequence, and Vladimir Putin gets to rush in and play peacemaker. But I'm going to go with a really outside choice for my worst idea of 2013. It involves a news event that was happened earlier this year, and I'm really kind of struck by how much it largely has been forgotten or kind of not a major in the forefront of people's minds. That was the Boston bombing of the Boston Marathon. Greg, no doubt you recall on Friday of that week, after these very dramatic series of events, the identification of the bombers, a shootout with police on Friday, the city of Boston and surrounding area largely shut down. And no one left their homes. No one was on the streets. The mayor and the governor and the authorities asked people to do this. As I understand it, pretty much everyone complied. And I'm really glad that they caught the guy. And I'm really glad that he's been brought to justice. But I really feel like this was yes, it was very, very extraordinary circumstances, but I feel like we're opening a really dangerous door. Because I can't think of another time in which the authorities basically asked an entire city and several areas to please stay in your homes, to really infringe, one of your most basic rights for indefinitely. And eventually, I guess by probably 5 o'clock in the evening, they had kind of lifted what was basically a curfew, and no one was allowed to come out of their homes. And I just worry about this becoming the go-to tactic for authorities in circumstances like this. You can understand in these unique set of circumstances, maybe it's there, but you worry that each time it gets used, it'll lower the bar for the next time. And I can't think of anything that is a more broad based infringement of people's rights. And yes, it's an emergency, and yes, I want to help the cops. I want to help the counterterrorism authorities and all that. But I just, I remember thinking that and thinking we had never seen anything like it in America before, and we have not really seen much discussion of it afterwards. And perhaps, knocking on wood, there'll never be another similar situation, and authorities will never be tempted to try to enforce a curfew in a U.S. city. But I just think it's a very bad idea. 10 years from now, we may be looking at that as a turning point in the types of authorities claimed by lawmakers in a crisis, in a world of terrorism. And look, we just saw Harvard University a short while back get shut down by somebody dialing in bomb threats. I do worry about us becoming captive to our fears and basically our society coming to a standstill out of an abundance of caution. I mean, yes, life requires caution. The war on terror is serious, but we cannot put our lives on hold every time somebody decides to take out their agenda and their frustrations and their rage on the public at large.
Jim, I love that choice. I think we've seen that too much. We've seen it with the whole debate over the NSA, and do we have to be snooping on everybody's information for the sake of security? We have the whole TSA debacle that's been going on for the last dozen years under this reasoning as well. And obviously some things do need to change in an era of terrorism, but fundamental liberties, like the right to leave your home, is certainly one that needs to be defended at all costs. And I agree with you. I'm shocked that there wasn't a deeper conversation about that. On to boldest tactic now, and you alluded to it briefly in your runners-up for worst idea, but I think you have to agree it's probably one of the boldest tactics of the year, and that was the defund Obamacare strategy shepherded by Mike Lee and Ted Cruz in the Senate. They got the House of Representatives to go along with it. The Senate, of course, just didn't have the votes to keep it going and force Obama to either accept it or veto it, most likely veto it. We can certainly debate about how long they should have played this out. Once Obamacare started unraveling immediately after the rollout, that would have been a good time to step out of the way and let the whole thing implode and without any other distractions. But the idea of forcing the issue onto the stage prior to the end of the fiscal year and once again highlighting how much of a debacle Obamacare was going to be, it's certainly bold.
Yeah. Not successful. And it's a good point. The category is not the successful political tactic of the year. It is bold. I think you're right. In fact, perhaps the single most consequential one. I went in a slightly different direction, trying to think of something that really is memorable and that, people were talking about and that may have actually changed the debate. Greg, even if you don't follow politics as closely as you and I mean, you see just bazillions and bazillions of television ads, negative ads, ones that are kind of meant to grab you. But I got to say, Generation Opportunity has taken its case against Obamacare with the creepy Uncle Sam ads, very often featuring somebody going to the doctor's office. They talk a bit about Obamacare, and all of a sudden, this giant-headed, like the team mascot from hell of the Uncle Sam looking kind of like a combination of those old Burger King commercials and like maybe, Heath Ledger's The Joker comes up, just kind of very creepily kind of, lurks in the background, all of a sudden strikes or something. Right now, Demon Sheep is looking kind of tame and easygoing compared to that. I don't know if they're necessarily the most effective form of political persuasion or communication, but certainly they are memorable in a world filled with political ads.
Yeah, those were, we talked about that in I believe it was the Crazy Martini at one point.
If you can spur nightmares, that's probably a bold tactic in the realm of politics. David Lynch just called and said it's a little too disturbing for him, and Tim Burton had said it's giving him nightmares.
Unbelievable. Great choice. That creeps you out even if you despise Obamacare. That had its effect, perhaps even more than it intended to. Jim, another great selection. Congratulations to all our recipients, and we'll do it again tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Columbus of Radio America. Please join us again on Tuesday for the next year-end award edition of the Three Martini Lunch.